Hey everyone, earlier this month, I decided to take a quick break from writing computer games. I had a little bit of a meltdown actually, where um, I almost wanted to kill myself, and also I had a number of not so pleasant situations amongst my social circle, and I lost quite a number of friends, and not a very good situation in my life, and I decided to take a 2 week break from the computer games to kind of recollect my thoughts, if you will. But I'm back at it, and I decided that I'm gonna be a little bit more casual going forward, as opposed to being adversarial in terms of the competitions and such. And so the first thing I did was to write a three-dimensional variation of Othello, because Othello is one of my favorite games. And I thought this would just be a fun game that I could play with friends as opposed to entering into a contest. Very caught up with all the contests that are going on. So the idea is that instead of on an 8x8 board, you're on a 4x4x4 cube. And instead of 8 directions of capture, I'll let you think about how many directions there are. There are quite a bit more than you would think. There are actually 26 different directions of capture, because, well, you're kind of, the piece that you're using to capture is kind of sitting in the middle of the cube, and then if you think of a 3x3 cube, right, it has 26 different directions it can go. So I've labeled these, just for simplicity, I've labeled all of the columns A through P, and each one of them have a 1 through 4 associated with it for each column. So we're going to go in the corner of A1. See, it doesn't really look like that's a capture, but it's a space diagonal, right? You got A1 to F2 to K3, and right off the bat you make one stable piece. Of course, your opponent can do the same thing. Okay. Let us do... Is there any other stable cell that we can capture at the moment? I'm going to admit that I'm not very good at playing any sort of Othello. I just know how to write it. I actually didn't put much effort into writing this game because all the code that existed for learning Othello kind of translated very well to this game as well. I don't think we can do D4 anymore, right? No, we cannot. So let's do H3, because we don't want to do H4 because that would allow white to potentially later on capture. So a little history about my computer games. I know I talked about this last month during my anniversary, but that was toward the height of when I went crazy and almost ended it almost ended tragically. So maybe I should rehash a little bit now that I'm in a better frame of mind. At the end of my time going to school at Rochester Institute of Technology, I was doing well in school. I was graduating with very good grades, but I didn't have a girlfriend. I had other things going on in my life that were going well. And I decided that part of the problem was that I'm not a very good social animal. See, I don't drink alcohol. I have a restricted diet for personal and for health reasons. I have some health problems that run in my family. I have personal health problems too. So that's out of the equation. I don't have too many other hobbies. You know, I get very dulled out when people talk about sports, or they talk about, well, I recently made some friends who love art. What else? I'm just not very good with humanities like that. They dull me out very quickly, and I just find I get bored very easily. So I started to think about, what am I going to do to give myself a little bit of a platform to interact with other people? By the way, that was a terrible move because the computer said it was winning by 7. Now it's saying it's winning by 32. So I decided that, well, if I wrote a computer game and I could sit down with others to say, hey, this is a game that I wrote, um, it wouldn't be dull to me. It wouldn't be like somebody doing some art, right? Although art I've been trying to interact with. Earlier this month, I drew a picture of what the solar system might look like from the point of view of somebody on Ganymede, the moon of Jupiter, because I want to visit Ganymede someday. That's my favorite place of the solar system. Uh, but other than that, art really, anything that doesn't involve math or science really quickly bores me out. And obviously, when I go to an event and there's food or alcohol or God forbid, drugs involved, I'm out of that too. And, anyways, I have a big problem with how I interact with all of my hobbies. The computer games, the, the astronomy. They all start very nice and sweet, but eventually they become this giant monster that causes me to, like 2 weeks ago, how I almost ended up not being able to be here to talk to you guys and show you a Othello program. This is exactly why food is so challenging for me. It's very easy for me to swear off something. It is not very easy for me to be around it and live happily with something. Even the healthy foods that I do eat, I do not have a very good... the foods are healthy. The relationship I have with the foods are not very healthy. Let's put it that way. I hope I can mingle with my games a little bit better over the next year. Let's see. About 3.5 years ago, I just broken up with a girl. I got into my car and I was about to drive home when I got so upset that I drove my car 100 miles away, believe it or not, before I realized where I was. So my girlfriend lived in Bellevue. This is a suburb of Seattle. I was living in Redmond. But before I knew it, I made it to Ellensburg. This is like a completely separate city from... Well, I guess there are people who kind of straddle between Ellensburg and Seattle. When I got there, I looked at the night sky and I just fell in love with it. And given that I have some friends there that I like to see from time to time anyhow, well, actually, I made those friends after I stormed out after I went there a few more times. I frequent Ellensburg now, especially if the weather gets really bad here in Seattle. I have seasonal depression, and sometimes I look for places with good weather to go. Let's see. Gotta admit, not very good at this game. And I don't think my program would be a top program either, because I literally threw it together with what I had with machine learning without really specializing it to the game. For the most part, I want this to be a fun game as opposed to a competitive game, because, again, I'm trying to relax a little bit. And, I guess next year, for the Computer Olympiad, if I don't get most of my important opponents to want to go there, I probably will skip that one, because I've been thinking about going to other attractions. I use up a lot of my vacation time for the conferences, and I use up a lot of my spare time during the days and during after work or over the weekends. I really want to be. I really enjoyed the last 2 weeks when I took off from my computer games. Although I felt so unproductive, it's such a weird feeling. I felt so productive and unproductive at the same time. At the same time, I got a lot of exercise. I got to indulge in other hobbies and practice a few new things. I've been trying to teach myself a foreign language. Oh, and I got to explore a little bit, if you will, the foreign language and going out to take a walk and going out and looking at scenery. I felt very productive on that front. I didn't feel so productive on the doing the math and science part though. So I felt very. I had mixed feelings about that. I gotta think about how I could do both because I had very mixed feelings over the last week. But it is what it is. At least I'm alive today, so it is what it is. I just need to think about how to sustain it. That's all. But that's why I'm writing a fun game as opposed to a competitive game at the moment. Let's see. Yeah, P2's not a good move because these guys would be stable if he takes it. But it's kind of moot because the computer claims it's winning by 60 points. Uh, let's see. How about yeah, E4 is not a very good move. See, I told you I was terrible at this game. Yeah, that was kind of moved. The computer says it's winning by all 64 and possibly even more. Well, it's machine learning, so there's obviously a little bit of error. But it's claiming. I want to see what it looks like when it wins all the cells. So let's keep going. C3. Let's see, G4. By the way, so I started writing the games to give myself a little bit of a platform to interact with my peers. The funny thing is, it hasn't really turned out though, because well, I work with math and science, as you can imagine, at my job. Most people, when they get off work, they don't want to look at even more of math and science. It's kind of funny because I recently took a road trip. I live in Seattle. I took a road trip to Montana. And along the highway, when I would go to a rest stop in the Seattle area, between Seattle and Ellensburg at least, when I would go to a rest stop, most of the rest stops don't have Wi-Fi. But when I made it to Idaho and Montana, you know, those are places where nobody uses technology, right? They're farmers, you know, but in Idaho and Montana, there are plenty of places, rest stops with Wi-Fi, and I thought that was kind of funny. And I just happened to run into some guy in Missoula, and I asked him, "Hey, that's weird. I live in Seattle. You know, we're the tech capital, but none of our rest stops have Wi-Fi." And the guy in Missoula, he told me, "Oh, of course. You guys work on the computer, so you take a break away from the computer. We work on our farm, so we take a break by going online." It kind of makes sense. It kind of makes sense. That's been my experience with my peers as well. The other problem with writing the games to interact with my peers is logistically, it has been a challenge. I live in the east side of Seattle. And when I'm not at home writing I live in an apartment right now. During the spring, in the summer, I was living in my car because the weather is very permitting of that. But I live in an apartment right now. But when I go out in public to write computer games, let's say I go to the library, I go to a restaurant, or even the college campus where I'm teaching right now. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but a lot of public places, they deliberately make their seating or scenery just uncomfortable. It makes it hard to... If you've ever tried to sit in the library for 8 hours or even 5 hours in a row, you'll get what I mean, right? You'll want to get up. I don't know if it's the lighting or the features of it. There's literally people who design things like that because they don't want you to loiter. Or stuff doesn't work the way it should. The electrical outlets are in very inconvenient places. The Wi-Fi doesn't always work correctly. I mean, not that I feel entitled to those things or anything, but it just goes to show the idea of writing games in a public place so I can interact with others faces challenges that I didn't think of when I started doing it. And maybe I need to rethink my strategy, is what I'm trying to say. Let's see. But it hasn't completely been a loss. I've learned a lot of things over the last 8 years writing computer games. I've almost killed myself 2 times now, but I've learned a lot of things, including the machine learning, the combinatorial games. And then I learned to reconnect with myself in between times when I get really stressed out about my computer games. I had a time when I wasn't eating right and I wasn't sleeping right and I got food poisoning. I was actually right after a conference in Amsterdam. I had gone to visit a friend in Poland and I got deathly ill during that trip. I remember recording a video and not good, not good. My friend was very upset. She was like, well, you want to travel halfway around the world just to write a computer game and then end up getting sick and having to miss your flight? And she was very upset at me. And kind of funny because the next year when I went to see her, she wouldn't allow me to write a computer game during my trip. She was like, you remember what happened last year? And she just turned her face away. Okay, I'll spend the time in Gdansk here without writing a computer game, which was, at the time, was very disappointing to me because I had planned to sit on the beach at Gdansk Bay and write a game. And in my autobiography, if you will, that would be the game that I wrote while relaxing in front of the bay. The Bayfront game is what I had planned to call it. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out, and instead I came home, and a couple months later I had gone to see another friend in San Francisco, a former coworker actually, and I sat in front of the bay in San Francisco and wrote the game. So that became the Bayfront game. I would have preferred to be Gdansk, but who cares? It's all done with. I had a good time. I didn't get sick my second time going to Poland. I guess my health is a little bit more important than bragging rights on my autobiography, if you will. Not even bragging rights. It's just a nice place to sit down to write a game. But it's a nice place to take a break from the games and connect with people. So it's all right. It's all right. It's all done with. So we lost by 62. I'd like to finish this game because I want to see what it looks like at the end. Let's see. I can't even tell which moves are legal and which ones are not. That's how bad I suck at this game. It looks like B2 might be, like a diagonal. Yeah. But yeah. I think I'm always going to have a challenge with doing something without overdoing it. It's just the way my body is set up. See, the reason I can't drink any amount of alcohol, I've never had alcohol abuse problems. Don't get me wrong. The problem is that once that line has been broken, I don't know where it will lead to. I quit drinking soda. How many years ago now? 16 and a half years ago. And before I quit drinking soda, I had tried to cut back on soda. Not because I wanted to, but my parents wanted me to. I mean, I grew up in a not so well-to-do family, at the time at least. And soda's just expensive, right? And on top of that, my family didn't think it was healthy, and on top of that, I had mental problems. Like, I would be upset about not having soda to the point of getting into fights with my family, and when I got older, I started to destroy the house and all that, and I got very, very, very easily angry. and my parents wanted me to break free from it, but they only wanted me to cut back on soda. They were still a very social group of people, uh, and it didn't work out. So my parents would go to the store and buy. We would go to the grocery store every week, every 2 weeks, whatever it was, and they would buy as much soda as they thought I should drink in a week or 2 weeks. At the time I didn't have a driver's license yet, and I was not happy. The day that we went shopping, I would have the soda and everything would be fine. Not really, because I would drink so much that I would be awake all night, and then I couldn't get up for school the next day, or get up for whatever event the next day. And then after that, I would be so depressed about not having soda, and this cycle just repeated itself over and over and over and over and over. And my parents never caught on to that pattern. They thought that I was just crazy and that I needed to cut back even more. And I remember I would argue with my parents. The following week when they would go grocery shopping, they wouldn't buy any soda at all, and I would be like, last time you only bought 2 liters, and it took me a week to drink it. They're like, yeah, right, you drank most of it on day one, and I was like, yeah, but if you average it out, I didn't drink any of it. I would come up with this weird logic. And the funny thing is, my parents never caught on to this problem. I quit drinking soda, and now they were preaching that maybe I should drink soda in moderation because my life is so boring without the soda, as if, not having to complain about not having soda, and, now that we're not even spending any money on soda, my parents weren't broke or anything, but they had other priorities in their finances, if you will. But it's just a no-win situation. I'm so happy not drinking soda, though. Even though it's been 16 and a half years, I've never missed it. Sometimes the only place I've ever missed soda, and this is a very minor detail, is that sometimes something comes up, like a song on the radio or a thought process, something that I haven't touched in 17 years, all of a sudden comes to mind. I remember I used to drink soda when I did that. So, wow, this is a while ago, actually. A few years ago, during a trip to Taiwan, I don't know what I saw, landmark or something, and it was like, soda! And it only took me 5 seconds to erase that concept out of my head, but some people get very caught up with that, and they're like, oh my god, I'm sacrificing all of that. To me, it's just, that was a good memory, and I don't have to reach for a soda today just because it was a memory. Let's see. Anyways, I cannot tell any of the legal moves anymore. The point is, I'm back in business with my computer games. I have to rethink about how I handle the games in the coming new decade. Thanks for watching.